I'm Gwen Jones from Missoula City Council, and welcome to our daily briefing for Monday, April 27th. Today we have Commissioner Dave Strohmeyer with us, and we also have Matt Lotzenheiser, Executive Director of the Historical Museum at Fort Missoula, as well as Donna McCrae, Director of Archives and Special Collections, which is a unit within the Mansfield Library at the University of Montana. So thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking about the fact that we are living through a historical event, this pandemic. And it is important that we capture this information for generations to come. So Commissioner Dave Strohmeyer actually spearheaded this initiative. And Dave, could you tell us about how you got this idea and the initial steps that you are taking?
Yeah, thanks, Gwen. And I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of waking up to a recognition that this is a historic moment that we are living through. And I think it was about a week after we declared a state of emergency in Missoula County, looking at all of the decisions that our department heads and staff were needing to make to be flexible and as resilient as possible to this emergency that we're in, and recognizing that we may not be recording or documenting the decisions that we're making. And having worked as a historian in the past, I am acutely aware of the challenges looking back on situations, on incidents, on events decades ago, and trying to piece together what those histories and stories are. So it seemed like an opportune time as a call to arms to historians to, in real time, look at what we're experiencing both from a governmental standpoint, but also having touched bases with Matt Lotzenheiser and others, recognizing that maybe there's a broader community-wide narrative that needs to be recorded and told. And that was really the beginning. And Matt stepped up to the challenge of helping, from Missoula County standpoint, coordinate this documentation effort.
Thanks. And I can guarantee that a lot of people in Missoula know far more about the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic than they did prior to March 1st. So Matt, can you tell us a little bit about how this initiative developed from there and what groups got involved?
Sure. So Dave and I had that meeting probably about a week after things really started picking up in Missoula County. And we started brainstorming about potential groups that could be involved and that would be helpful in kind of gathering information to try to capture this perspective from our community. So we reached out to the University of Montana, and from there I kind of reached out to Donna McCrae with the Mansfield Archives, and Donna's been super helpful with us. But then it continued to grow, and I think it's grown, well beyond what Dave and I originally envisioned this being. We've engaged the Missoula Downtown Association and the Heritage Missoula Group. The Heritage Missoula Group is the group that is working currently on the downtown interpretive plan. And there were folks like Alan Newell, who some might recognize, who used to be with Historical Research Associates, and some other folks. So they got involved, and we started to schedule a few conference calls, and it continues to develop from there. We continue to collect some really great information.
Thanks. Donna, as the director of the Archives and Special Collections Unit, what type of information did you think it was important to collect?
Thank you for that question. I would say the first thing that we thought of at the university was really documenting what was happening at the university. So we were thinking about, what are the administrators doing? What decisions are they making? What is the impact on our faculty and on our students, and how can we capture those stories? And so we had already sort of formally started a process of making sure that we were picking up the website every day and getting that kind of information. But then when Matt reached out to me, I realized, we really need to be doing more. And this partnership was a really great way for us to think about how could we, in our role, help to document what's happening beyond the walls of the university and really look at what's happening in the Missoula community. And so that's kind of the focus of this partnership, is both raising awareness around the county of what kinds of documents might be useful and relevant in the future, but also getting people to contribute their own personal stories, personal photographs, their poetry, whatever it might be that they're creating at this time that's helping them make sense of the world right now, because those are the stories that we're going to be really interested in 10 years from now and 100 years from now. And if we don't proactively capture it, archive it, and especially for those things that are electronic and won't survive in their current form if we're not paying attention to it, really managing those materials into the future. So that's really the sort of two areas where I feel like the university is really focused.
Great. I hope that someone is capturing some of the 8 o'clock howling every night. One of my favorite things.
Yeah.
Get a microphone out there.
Yeah.
So Donna and Matt, as this project developed, were there other groups that you thought it was important to collect information for?
Sure. So once we started having some of these meetings, I think one of the messages that I really appreciated in working with the University of Montana was the idea that we didn't just want this project to be a top-down. So, we knew that we were going to capture what's happening within city and county government in those groups, but we also thought, what are some ways we could reach out to everyday Missoulians? And I know a couple of the other groups that we thought of, we realized that we didn't have any representation from our rural groups. So we decided to reach out through a group that I've worked with Dave on. We have a Heritage Roundtable for Missoula County. So we reached out to some of the folks that are part of that Heritage Roundtable from Sealy Lake and Swan Valley and got them involved in the project, because we realized how important it was to capture that rural perspective in Missoula County. So it isn't just Missoula City oriented. Some of the other groups we thought about, we've now brought on somebody with the hospitals. So we thought it was important to capture the perspective of hospitals in dealing with this as well too, and from an inside perspective. So those are two of the groups we thought of. Donna, did you have a couple others?
Well, what I'm hoping is that through the business association and other groups, that people will think about the types of content that they would want to capture. So both the formal kind of what is happening, what are the press releases saying, what are those daily incident command briefings saying, but then some of the more ephemeral notes that people are taking as they attend meetings or thoughts that they have. So I think we've identified some partner groups, but I really feel like this project has the opportunity to reach many different elements of Missoula County. So even if we haven't formally reached them yet, my hope is that as the word gets out and as our project develops, we'll have more representation rather than less.
Great. And Matt and Donna, along those lines, are there plans to interview individuals involved in Missoula's response to COVID-19 and take some oral histories down?
I know, well, from a county perspective, there's so many folks that I think are going to be important to capture their perspective in dealing with this. I think about some of our county leadership, whether it be our commissioners or some of the folks from an administrative standpoint at the top of the county, and kind of capture that perspective. But I also think of a lot of the everyday folks, the folks that are involved in one of the emergency management groups. Another group I think would be really fascinating to interview as part of this eventually would be the folks that have manned the call center, because they're dealing with everyday Missoulians and kind of getting a chance to pick their brain about the type of questions that they're getting and the type of response they're getting from the community, I think would be really important.
Yeah, I know for a fact that there's an individual in UM's history department who is applying for a grant that will allow him and students in the public history program to do sets of oral histories. I think he's looking to do 40 oral histories with people who are in the healthcare profession. So that's a formal oral history project that's already being planned and underway. But I would imagine that over the course of the next 12 months, we will see a number of other types of formal oral history projects happen. And I also hope that through our website and through getting the word out, that we'll get more of the informal, maybe oral history. StoryCorps has set up a StoryCorps Connect online application where people can record their interviews or stories with their family members, maybe that they're living with for the first time in years, if it's kids that have gone home because they couldn't stay at school, or kids who are in our K-12 educational system who are now spending more time at home with their parents, getting those maybe more informal but equally as important kinds of oral histories captured and then hopefully delivered to the archives or preserved in some way so that it becomes part of the record of what's happening both in our county and across the country.
And I'm going to skip a couple questions, but I'll come back to them just because I think it flows from what you were just saying. How can the public share their stories with the COVID-19 documentation project? You mentioned they can call in and leave their story, basically speak into the phone and leave their story. Could you give us a little bit more information regarding that? And are there any other methods too that they can share their stories?
Right. So right now we are not doing phone calls because we're all working remotely, but what we're hoping people will do is record on their own phones and then email those recordings to us or use the website form that we've set up, which if you don't mind, I'll just read the URL right now. It's lib.umt.edu/ASC/COVID-project. And if you just Google Missoula County, COVID documentation project, we're one of the top results that comes up. And so what I'm really hoping is that people will send us, again, their audio stories, their audio files, if they've done a recording, or they'll go on to the StoryCorps app, which is a national project, and record their story, but then save that and send a copy to the archive. So we're getting submissions through that electronic form on our website, but I'm also getting emails from individuals who maybe just have questions about the project, or maybe they have something that they want to submit, but they aren't ready for it to be fully public right away. So they want to talk with me about how can I send you something that maybe I don't really want people to see or read for 20 years, is that okay? And that's absolutely okay. That's a lot of, the content that we get in archives are people's journals or diaries, things that are really personal that they're not ready to share, but that doesn't mean that they don't have really great historic, important value. So we're happy to take those as well. And if the electronic submission form, it asks you, to make it available publicly right away. But if that's not something that people are ready to do, then just send me an email and we'll have that conversation. So I don't want to miss the content. Whether it can be available right now or it has to wait for some time in the future.
And Dave, I'm thinking maybe we'll need to add a link on the Missoula County COVID-19 website would be great. But well, let me circle back around here. Dave, why is this project so important to Missoula, and who will benefit in the long run, do you think?
I think simply put, this is a gift to future generations of Missoula County residents. There's lots of different levels of beneficiaries to this, from in real time, those decision makers, be that with city or county government or any of the institutions who are partners in this effort, be it healthcare, the university. We're learning lessons right now that will help us be more resilient, even in the short term. If there's a second phase of COVID-19 that rolls through our communities in the next year, what are we learning right now that will better position ourselves to be adaptable and resilient to that event? And the same lessons could be transferable to other emergencies that really galvanize the community. So decision makers, the institutions who are a part of this effort, but then the community at large. I think you've rightly pointed out that we've been looking back to 1918 for information of how folks were adaptable and as individuals and as institutions at that point in time, and also maybe lamenting the fact that, doggone it, we wish that they had maybe documented something a little bit more at that point of time a century ago. And now we have just this opportunity to, in real time, try to document and record those things that we think we know that certainly researchers are going to want to know in the future, but also decision makers even in the moment.
Absolutely. And last question, Matt, anything to add to what Dave just said in terms of what is the end goal of this project?
You know, just to say that we want to create this comprehensive archive. As Dave mentioned, I mean, it's going to be incredibly useful when I think of scholars, historians, when they go back and they want to chronicle this period in our history. I mean, I think in all honesty, this is one of the watershed moments of the United States history, probably at least in the last 3 or 4 decades. It's something that will define us for many, many years to come. And so therefore, it's something that is going to want to be studied by historians and scholars and everyday folks. So I think we're doing our part to preserve those stories for Missoula County and creating this archive that we can have available to folks so that as we try to better understand how this period of time has impacted us 20 years from now, we'll have the materials we need to do that.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you. I agree. I think it is a totally fascinating time that we are living. It is incredibly horrifying, but also fascinating and very important to have this historical perspective. So thanks, everyone. And I hope the public is paying attention and eventually can provide their input. So as always, please socially distance yourself from others, wear masks when going into businesses, and stay healthy. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Gwen.
Thank you.